That's what she told me. And I'm like, okay, that's good because all of you who are coming after me, you can thank me for setting the bar really low. The only thing I'll say is that Tammy told me that it had to be true. I'm like, no, that's not the way it works in the North Fork. In the North Fork, as you all know, you never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But Tammy had different rules. So I'm like, okay, well, I have to think of one that is true. And so, yeah, it took me a while trying to figure out the one. I had quite a few, but yeah. So I told her, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a story about my favorite pair of flip-flops. She said, oh. And so I will tell you, I've had these flip-flops for decades. And now all of you who have young kids will get some appreciation out of this. So it's not exactly true that we were living up here since 2005 full time. I sent Tammy a correction on that and didn't quite make the final print. But it was around that time that when the kids were, 8, 9, 10, 12, I love to have them sleep outside under the stars. No internet, no HughesNet, no StarNet, no movies, no TV. Let's go out and count stars. And I tell you what, I knew it's a great way for them to fall asleep because they see 3 shooting stars and they're out, right? And you guys know how heavy the frost gets in the summer. So I'd lay a big ground cloth down, and then we had these big 4-inch foam mattresses, and I just put the kids in a row, and sleeping bags, and they usually bring some friends. So this one summer, we're out there doing the star thing, and get all 4 of them, 5 of them actually in a row. And then I go at the bottom of that, and we're counting stars, and eventually they're all asleep. I know because I am too. And these are my trusty flip-flops. You go out to get in your sleeping bag. You gotta get from the house, across the lawn to, so you wear your flip-flops because then you just jump right into the sleeping bag. So I'm sure I wasn't snoring. I didn't snore until later in life. But at the time, I was sound asleep and something wakes me up. Something just goes boom. Like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know, let's go back to sleep. Now, as a parent, there's something that kicks in, like, wait, what about the kids? I'm like ready to go back to sleep, but something woke me up and I'm really not quite sure what it was. And so I kind of lift up and I look over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all there. I'm like, all right, must be nothing. So get ready to start going back to sleep, and I'm like, well, what if it was something? So, it's that parent thing, just, so finally I kind of sit up and I start looking around, and everything looks just natural. I don't see anything out of place except for this big dark shape over there. And I'm like, well, that's odd. That's pretty big. That kind of looks like an elk. Or is it a bear? I don't know. So finally I reach around, try to find my flashlight. No, it's a wolf. He's just sitting there on his haunches looking at me, and I'm like, no, it's just a wolf. He's not doing anything. Go back to sleep. So lay down, the parent thing kicks in again. It's like, what are you going to tell your kids' friends' parents when one doesn't come home? And I'm trying to think about, well, I could tell them this story and that story, and I'm like, okay, no. Just time to tell the wolf it's time to leave. So I'm like, look over, he's still there. I'm like, all right. So I reach for my trusty flip-flops. The kids have played a trick on me. They've removed one of them. So there's only one there. And I'm like, I'm going to have a word with them in the morning, but the last thing you want to do when dealing with a wolf on the North Fork is wake your kids up. You want them to sleep through it. That is also why you can't scare the wolf at the top of your lungs. You kind of have to make a stealthy attack. If find a rock, run over towards it, throw the rock at it, and watch it take off. Look back, the kids are still sleeping, mission accomplished. Climb back in bed. It's kind of cold out there. Get back in and drifting off to sleep. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 hours. I don't know, but suddenly I wake up, I'm like, well, what if he came back? I look over and there's that dark shape again. I turn the flashlight on, he's back. I'm like, son of a... So I'm like, okay, this time I gotta get really real. So, I get out, I'm in my feet, no flip-flops. I'm looking around for a rock, I'm running at him, and he takes off, and I find two this time. Throwing these rocks, and he seems to, go beyond the reach of my puny little flashlight, and I think we're done. Exactly. Now, if I'd had a dog like that, and so back in the sleeping bag, I'm going to sleep, and I'm like, okay, we're done. We're definitely done. And I don't think I started snoring, but eventually I'm like, wait, you should just make sure. So I look over, and there he is again. I'm like, all right, now I've lost my patience. It's not about the kids anymore. It's about me and the wolf. And I'm not really worried about him. But luckily, right behind me is the Toyota, when we came in today. And it's just parked next to the cabin. I'm like, okay, that's it. I run over, jump in it, headlights on. I chase that wolf across the prairie. I see him disappear the other side of the road. Pretty sure when I turned around, he was somewhere around Agricola. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Back the car up. I'm like, and I'm going to have to explain to the kids. They're all snoring. I'm like, so I start the car. I chase the wolf. I back it back, and they sleep through the whole thing. Right, okay. It was probably about 10 minutes later, I looked over. He wasn't there. So I'm like, okay, back to sleep. So in the morning, I get up. Parents, you got to make breakfast, right? Your kids expect to be fed particular time, what it is they're waiting for, pancakes and whatever, right? You got your menu. So kids finally get their little you-know-whats out of bed, come up to the table, and we're having a nice breakfast, and I decide it's okay to tell them about the wolf. So I'm like, look guys, we had a visitor last night. It was this wolf. He was really friendly. I had to run him off. And I would have been able to chase him a little better if one of you little dirty whatever didn't take my flip-flop. So I want the flip-flop back the end of breakfast. And they're all like, oh yeah. Innocence all around, right? Well, little Katie excuses herself from the table at some point. And she just disappears. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So we're finishing up, starting to do dishes, and Katie comes back into the house, and she said, well, Dad, I found it. So you found what? Oh, I found your flip-flop. My flip-flop? You mean this one? She says, yeah. I'm like, I thought you guys took it. She said, no, it was right where you told me the wolf was. And it's got his teeth marked through him, and he bit off part of it. And I'm like, okay, so what woke me up was the wolf taking my flip-flop from about here, and then being pissed that I wasn't willing to play tag all night. I was like, and so that was when I was like, okay, that was an experience, and after that, the kids never wanted to sleep outside again, and I was like, well, what am I going to do about that? You're going to be next?
No.
Are you the hook?
We have a question for you. What color was the wolf?
He's one of the gray ones.
What year was it?
I think in 95.
Too early?
I mean 05, not 95.
So the reason the question came up is there's
Is she missing one?
She was then, and it was a friendly gray wolf, like people, and shoes. White and gray. More white than gray.
It was the middle of the night, and it was a flashlight except for the headlamps.
And he did like to steal.
This is why you tell these stories, because you can solve mysteries.
Do you have a tooth imprint you want to check?
Yeah. You can see if the tooth fits. You can wear it.
What was the name?
Easter. Well, as a result, my kids won't sleep out anymore. All right, one last
Probably safe now.
One last story to tell you that Tammy said I should mention to you.